Hi there, you're listening to the Guitar Speak podcast, produced here in Sydney, Australia. My name is Matt Wakeling. Thank you so much for joining me today. Now today we're speaking to Tim Green of Mojo Stompboxes.com. Tim is a guitar pedal nut. In fact, he owns what is in most likelihood the largest collection of Boss compact pedals in Australia and associated paraphernalia. He's also into Maxon pedals, Greco, all that kind of Japanese era of incredible pedals in the 70s and 80s. Now, Tim has got a lot of things going on. Tim was the guy behind Toy Room Effects, which was a highly respected builder of boutique effects here in Sydney a little while ago. Mojo Stompboxes is where Tim buys and sells these vintage stomp boxes, and it's been an online concern for a long time, but Tim also talks to us about his new bricks and mortar location, which is very, very exciting. Now, as you'd expect from all this, Tim has a really great background in vintage Boss, Ibanez, Maxon, Greco, all that kind of stuff. And I took the opportunity to ask a few questions. Firstly, I asked him about a few pedal stories, pedal myths that I'd heard of, and asked if he could confirm or deny some of these stories about the early histories of some of these companies. And then it got a little bit personal. Like many guitarists, I've bought and sold gear, and I've moved a couple of old Japanese pedals, which I kind of liked, kind of sold them at the time to do the next big thing, and always felt a bit bad about it, and wondered what the state of the market was for those pedals right now. So I did ask Tim about a couple of personal pedal situations. I'm sure we've all got stories like that. Maybe if you got one, you could send us a line on our Facebook or our Instagram account. Alright, hey, before we get to our interview with Tim, I just want to let you know, coming up soon is our NAMM special. There's a lot of our former guests in NAMM this weekend, the massive convention in America with all the latest gear developments and announcements. Our good friend Michael Ross from Guitar Modern is there covering the show, and we will catch up soon to discuss the show. So Michael will give us the bird's eye view of what has happened at NAMM this year. Alright, that's going to come up though, so stay tuned. Anyway, here we go. Here's my interview with Tim Green from Mojo Stompboxes.com. Tim Green, welcome to the Guitar Speak podcast.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Mate, it's really great to have you. Now, I know you're a guitar pedal nut, to put it mildly. What was your first guitar pedal experience?
First overall experience is probably something that most people have done, where you walk into the Billy Hyde or to Alan's music here with your old man and just sort of pick out the first thing that speaks to you. And so I think I had one of the little purple Behringer things, the overdrive / distortion, that was a copy of one of the old Boss ones. So I walked in and I thought, yeah, this is going to make the crap that I have at the moment sound better for some reason. Because we're all naive once, and we all thought that Behringer was going to do magic things to us. So I sort of walked in and found that in a bargain bin for $30 or something like that, and managed to convince Dad to buy it, even though he was just there for a set of sticks, and it sort of grew from there.
Nice.
But, yeah, that was number one, which I have a bit of a memory of, and
yep.
Yeah, from there it was, multi-effects and tone labs and interfaces and all that sort of stuff. But
okay, cool.
The standard rite of passage for most guitarists, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. My first pedal was a Boss DS1 that I bought out of the trading post. So for you youngsters out there, that was pre-internet. You'd buy the trading post on Thursday, and it was just full of second-hand stuff. So you'd turn to the musical instrument section, and yeah, that was in '86, I think. So yeah, an overdrive or distortion, often the first one. So you sound like you come from a musical family. Was your dad a drummer if he was looking for sticks?
He tries to be. He plays in the old fuddy-duddy cover bands that do a gig every couple of weeks to the local RSLs and things like that. But he definitely got me into it. Throughout primary school, I played trombone, which is a real lady killer of an instrument as a kid growing up. So once I hit high school, I tried to hide that and picked up a guitar and tried to sort of bluff my way through a different instrument for a while. There was a little, you could take it out of your bedroom and you didn't feel like a bit of a dork. So, I mean, yeah, obviously mum's tone deaf, but he sort of put me onto music and introduced me to music as a kid. And I remember sort of growing up listening to things like The Living End and those
Yep.
sort of bands that had a big guitar, big sort of punky sort of vibe to it. And
Yeah, awesome.
that really sort of stuck.
Cool, very cool. So you went from your Behringer, your purple Behringer. So you said Tone Labs, like is that like the Vox multi effects?
Yeah. The things that have a tube in it, and so you think, oh, this is gonna satisfy my 15-year-old cravings to have an AC 50 or an AC 30 without
Sure.
spending the money on it. And it had an AC 30 setting, so
Yep.
you think that's gonna be, that's gonna be the last bit of gear you're gonna buy as a 15 to 16-year-old, but you realise when you grow up a little bit that it's not the case, and it doesn't really last as you'd wish. But yeah, you go through all those multi effects and mess around with modelling, and I think that sort of brings you out what you want, what you sort of need as a musician or as a collector or whatever you are.
Sure. Yep.
So that it sort of paves the way for you a little bit.
hmm So when did you discover that there are pedals and then there are pedals? Like, so you're well known for your love for Japanese made pedals like Boss and Ibanez and Maxon. When did you really latch onto that kind of stuff?
I took a fairly roundabout approach to get to the stuff that I chase today. I went through a lot of the online forum stages and all of that, where you're buying on hype and all that, and I actually took off on a bit of a mission to collect the Maxon 9 series, the Ibanez 9 series at a stage, and I ended up getting 3 of them and gave up. And I then got thrown basically a really good price on a Love Tone meatball, which is the big envelope filters that sit around 600 to 800 bucks nowadays.
Yeah, wow.
And I fell in love with the ridiculousness of those. So between the Love Tone stuff and the Foxrock stuff, I ended up building basically a full board of Love Tone and Foxrocks, and was the envy of a lot of people online for quite a while.
Nice.
So that sort of ticked over my, I guess, love of completionism or collecting something to a degree where you could call yourself a collector of it. You could say, yeah, I've got 6 or 7 of these.
Yeah.
And so you can classify yourself as a bit of a collector of something. So that's sort of what ticked me over onto, I guess, borderline hoarding, but more or less just having a goal with your gear. So having a goal and sort of sticking with it, saying, I want to focus on this. I want to have as much of this as I can. And so yeah, once the Love Tone sort of craze for me died down, and I realised that the Love Tone gear and the Foxrocks gear is geared towards good musicians, I sort of got rid of it all and realised that it was being wasted on me. It was sitting in my in my garage in my bedroom. It wasn't getting used anywhere near as much as it could be.
Okay.
So I sort of moved on from the high end stuff, I guess.
Yep. So you mentioned Maxon. Can I, as we talk about your story as well, if I can ask you some questions as well. What's the deal with Ibanez and Maxon? Because they've got some very different products, of course, but they've got some that are virtually identical, even almost down to the serial number. What do you know? Can you explain the history there?
I can. It's easy to explain over writing because I don't get a chance to sort of get it down. But it's basically that Maxon is, and I'll probably cop a lot of sort of criticism or whatever for this, but Maxon's the father or the mother company of a lot of other people. So in mid-70s, they were manufacturing pedals. They were the pedal manufacturer, basically. And then Ibanez sort of contacted them and was like, can we have this? Can we have one of what you're doing? Can we put our brand on it? At the same time, people like Greco and Pax and a few other companies that obviously Greco took off and went other places with their brand, but a few other little brands have things floating around that are the exact circuit, the exact enclosure, everything like that with a different brand.
Okay.
So a lot of companies were basically just rebranding obviously not in a sense of rebranding today where you just take it, paint your own stuff on it, but coming out of the same factory with different logos on it.
Yeah.
And Ibanez was the one that sort of stuck, especially with the Tube Screamer and that sort of range.
Yeah.
That basically stuck in the early 80s, and people got on board with that.
Okay.
It could have, in a parallel universe, that could have been any other brand.
Sure.
It just happened to be Ibanez was the ones that took Maxon stuff and sort of took off with it. And I mean, most of the old Ibanez stuff from the early 80s has Maxon branded battery doors, Maxon branded circuit boards, and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
there's no secret to it being the same stuff.
Yeah.
But essentially they are, they're a parent company. The other thing with Maxon, when it expanded a little bit, they were Japanese only to an extent. So the Maxon gear in the late 70s, early 80s, more or less, was only available in Japan. Then the Ibanez gear was the export models.
Oh, okay.
So
Gotcha.
you get things like super tube screamers and all that sort of stuff. You see a Maxon one that was sold in a store in Japan, so an Ishibashi or something like that, at the same time as Ibanez was being sold in for the Billy Hydes or the guitar centers or whatever.
The equivalents,
whatever else
yeah,
around.
gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha. So in the West, I guess that's why we think of a Tube Screamer as being originally perhaps an Ibanez thing until we dig a little deeper.
Yeah, and it's also why we a lot of the time see Maxon as being so exotic or so sort of different, because I'm not the oldest person, so I wouldn't be able to attest to when they originally came out or anything like that. But I know that you were never exposed to it, so you'd see this rare Maxon pedal floating around, and the main reason it's rare is it was never available in the Western market.
Okay.
So a lot of that does feed it.
Cool. Now, Boss have just celebrated their 40th anniversary last year in 2016. So they kicked off in 1976, obviously, and an offshoot of the Roland company. What can you tell me about the start of Boss starting to make pedals?
Well, obviously they had the whole Roland pedal thing in the mid 70s with the double beats, the B-bars, the funny cats, all of those sort of big Roland boxes. And I think the first pedal with Boss branding was the flanger, which was in the Roland enclosure, but they put Boss on the BF1.
Okay.
But then I think, obviously the compact series comes out in 1977, and they sort of revolutionized things a little bit, and they sort of went the next level with their pedal branding. Basically, they decided guitarists and bass players are going to use pedals, and we're going to give it to them, and we're going to set up that, rather than sort of having no direction with the Roland pedals that they're releasing, but there wasn't any real sort of system to what they were doing. They were big pedals, they were a bit hard to manage, and all that, and so they sort of went and created pedals as you sort of see it now, I guess, with Boss.
Yeah, sure. The first, or the oldest Boss pedal I recall seeing is a chorus ensemble, one of those giant sort of grey-green kind of things.
Yeah. There's them as well. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
They had the boss name to them as well.
Yeah.
I always think the flanger. I've never had the chorus ensemble.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Played through them, but I've never actually owned one because the voltages have always been an issue for. I've never found an Australian one that's sort of stayed with me.
Okay.
And you can't really buy them from overseas because it's step downs and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, sure. I remember playing through one.
Certainly a hell of a pedal.
Yeah, I remember playing through one years ago. Oh, not even through a stereo rig, just straight into a mono amp, and it was unbelievable. But yeah, really big, unwieldy kind of hunk of metal. So.
Yeah.
So what was the first compact Boss pedal?
They came out with 3. They came out with what's now known as the Traffic Light series, which is the red of the Spectrum, the yellow of the OD1, and the green of the PH1 phaser. So
okay, yeah.
They came out with the 3 of those in the 70s.
Cool.
As the compact ones, and obviously the Spectrum didn't really take off as the other 2 did. So
sure,
they discontinued that and kept the other ones on, and then every year since then, barring I think 1992, they didn't release one. and
Okay.
maybe one other year. They've released new ones every year since then, so
Wow, that's massive.
they've
With,
been busy.
yeah, with the Spectrum, was that like I've seen pictures of them, but was that like I don't know, like an audio enhancer, some sort of
Yeah,
idea
it's
there?
essentially a single band EQ, more than anything. So you can tweak it to whichever range you want it to change. More than anything, it does that cockwa
Oh, okay,
sort of
okay,
sound. But yeah, basically it's a single band parametric EQ. So
okay,
you can mess with a few different frequencies. I think it's from about 500 hertz to 5 kilohertz.
okay, cool.
Mostly kicked off with keyboard players,
All right, yep.
because they could mess with their frequencies a little bit more. Because even on a guitar, a lot of the time, if you get someone who doesn't really know Boss pedals and you give them a Spectrum, they plug it in and they think it's broken because it doesn't do a whole lot. They've
Uh-huh.
got the first Boss pedals had a momentary LED. That's why, sort of a weird trivia fact, but that's why it says check above any Boss LED. It doesn't
Oh,
say
okay,
on
yep,
and off. It
yep.
doesn't say active. They were originally there to check if there was a battery that had power. So
Oh,
basically, you
okay,
press the foot switch down, the
yep.
light goes on. So it's not to indicate whether it's on or off or anything like that. It's basically just to say there's power in this.
Ah, very
Um,
cool.
but the first ones of them were momentary. So you give people a Spectrum, they hit the foot switch and the light doesn't stay on, or
Yeah,
they don't.
okay.
And so it's one of those things that it's very, very subtle until you sort of play with it for quite a bit and find a few uses for it. But they're a very underestimated pedal because they can do some cool things. They're just not as noticeable as a lot of other pedals released either then or today, really.
Yeah, sure, sure. A story I've heard about the OD1, and I'm not sure if it's true. You might know, but the OD1 came out, so like a two knob overdrive, and then Maxon or Ibanez came back with the Tube Screamer with a tone control, and
Hmm.
then Boss replied with the SD1 or the Super Overdrive, which then had level and gain, like the original, or level and drive plus a tone control. Is there any truth to that story?
Um, I mean that's a tough one because I've got Maxon original catalogs from I think 76,
Oh, okay.
77, and
Yep.
78,
Yep.
and they have overdrives from that period. So they have pedals that they marketed as an overdrive. It came out then. It's not the same exact circuit, so it's not the same circuit as a Tube Screamer or anything like that. But Maxon did make overdrives just before 77.
Okay.
They sort of paved the way to Tube Screamers. So the OD, Maxon made an OD 802,
Okay.
which is a distortion and sustainer 2, they call it. That's essentially a grittier Tube Screamer, and they were released um, in that sort of time period around the same time.
Okay.
So obviously, Tube Screamers didn't come out for a few years after then, but Maxon technically, and once again, I don't want to give an exact date, but I think they would have come out with that just before the OD one. Uh, and I've had a few of them over the last sort of year or so, and can attest to that. The other thing they came out with was the OD 880,
Okay. Yeah.
which they're the best overdrive pedal I've ever played. You
Is,
can take your clock, you can throw that out. You can take any modern pedal. The original soft distortion is one of the most musical pedals you can play, and that's coming from a pretty bad musician. So give that to a good musician, and they can do the world with it. They're an incredible sounding pedal, and they don't have the tone control. So they're probably the most comparable to an OD1.
okay. So
Um,
that's
but
the
then yeah,
Maxon
obviously,
880
obviously they came out. Yeah, the 880. It's
from
called the
Maxon.
soft
Okay.
distortion.
Cool. So like a low gain sort of thing, I guess. Did that have
Yeah.
the big mid hump that a Tube Screamer would have? Was that
Not really. They're
okay?
very clear. I mean, they feel more musical than most pedals you play. You plug in some distortions and they distort. You plug in some overdrives and they drive. It sounds like music basically. I mean, it's hard to describe, but it's just a very, very nice. It's a very nice sound. To them. And I mean, they released sort of two versions of those, one in 76 and one in 79.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're talking about real early overdrives that predate Tube Screamers and OD ones and super overdrives and that. That's your pedal. So I sort of regard that as the first real overdrive to come out. And that was 3 years before Tube Screamers were sort of ever hitting the market anyway. So
yeah, cool. Now you've got quite the collection. Is it predominantly Boss? Is that the main stuff you go after, or?
Regarding pedals themselves, I stick to Boss and Roland predominantly.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm trying to fill out the Maxon catalogue from either 76 or 77.
Cool.
I'm trying to fill that out with their boxes. So, I mean, I've got 3 of those at the moment. I've got the original flying pan with a box, which is the phaser stereo pan tremolo in one.
Okay, yep.
Did Ibanez re-released for a year, I think in 2008 or something around there.
Yep.
So I've got one of those in the box. I've got the pedal phaser, which is the wire enclosure, but it's actually a phaser and it changes the rate.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I got one of those from 77, and then I got the double sound, which is it's a fuzz wah basically. So I've managed to be lucky enough to find them in the original boxes that I've jumped on. So I have a little modest sort of Maxon collection, as well as a few compacts with their boxes. But yeah, the box count at the moment is sort of sitting at about 40 old Japanese pedals with the boxes and manuals and
nice
variations of each and that sort of stuff. Plus I got some of the Roland stuff from the 70s in very good condition with their boxes. So
okay, cool.
It started small and sort of expanded.
Nice.
Logarithmically, and now it's a bit much, but yeah, it's always been the Boss stuff that has been for the most collectible for me. That's always been the stuff that it has been the best to target.
Cool. Now, are you focusing on? We'll talk about your retail in a moment, but for your own collection, are you mainly focusing on Japanese Boss pedals, or are you moving over to Taiwanese as well?
Japanese mainly because they are obviously the more scarce of the bunch. A lot of the Taiwanese stuff is still available nowadays. So I mean, I've got most of the early ones that I want boxed up and available, and I play them. I mean, once again, not a great musician, but I make use of them. They don't sit in the display case 24 hours a day. A couple of them will come out every so often, and I'll mess around with them and just try to keep them going. But most of the harder to find stuff I have, and I sort of keep. I mean, I got a few oddities in there. Like I got a prototype PH1 phaser.
Okay, cool.
Not saying it's the first ever one or anything like that, but it seems to be a prototype because the serial number isn't stamped. It's actually a sticker, and on the sticker is a name, a Japanese name.
Okay.
So I sent that over to I got Boss Australia to send that over to Japan, and they came back with it was most likely a tech or one of the builders that either made it for a friend or made it for themselves or something along those lines. So I mean, the cool little things like that you only really get from the Japanese stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Once production got a bit more intense in Taiwan, you lose a lot of the personal touches. But I mean, I'm lucky enough to have a few things like that floating around. It just sort of add to the collection and make me smile, I guess.
That's cool. What are you on the lookout for in terms of the Japanese Boss stuff?
Like I said, I've got most of what I'm happy with. I'm missing boxes for a few of my touch wahs.
Okay.
I'm down a slow gear at the moment. I just got a few vibratos in, so I'm good for those after having a bit of a drought on finding the perfect VB2. But at the moment, the slow gear, I've had them without the box. I've had them floating around, but that's been the one that's it's sort of been that it just hasn't come up at the right time for me. I've either just spent a ton of money on something else, or I've missed the auction or anything like that. But yeah, the slow gear has definitely been a bit of a loss for me.
Okay. Cool, very cool. Can I run some personal stories by you, and can you let me know if I've done something really bad? Now I'm a little bit older than you. Obviously, my first pedal I bought in the 80s. In the 90s, like a lot of guitar players, I thought, quick, I need a rack. I did my effects in Iraq. So sold a bunch of stuff, bought some different stuff, bought and sold. Anyway, these are the pedals I've bought and sold. There's three main ones I sort of regret. So the first one was my Boss DS1. I bought that in, I bought it secondhand in '86. So it's obviously a Japanese one. I had the box. I've still got the instruction manual.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Like, what instructions do you need for a distortion pedal? I don't know, but it's got them. Was that a major mistake selling my Boss DS1?
Last count with DS1s, I think I have 7 or 8.
Okay.
From the 80s. So I've got a boxed. You see, that was the other thing that crossed my mind. While we're talking DS1s, I thought, you know what, maybe if I just sell everything I have, I can collect a DS1 from every year, and then maybe every month, and then just get silly with DS1s.
Awesome. Yeah.
So when you're talking DS1s, there's no shortage of them out there.
There's a lot of them,
so
yeah, I figured.
Selling one from '86, you'd be able to find an equivalent pedal pretty easily. So I wouldn't be too sort of distraught if you sold that for cheap. I mean, I got a 70s. A 79 and an 80 with the boxes and manuals, and then I've got sort of miscellaneous ones from the mid 80s, plus I've got a few from Taiwan that have the Japanese circuit board in them as well from that little transitional period. So yeah, I wouldn't be too upset about selling it.
Okay.
A DS1.
Okay, one for one. Like, really, I'm happy with my rig and everything now, but I'm just thinking, you know, were these pedals gonna put my kids through college or something, or uni? Anyway, okay, pedal number 2, an Ibanez digital flanger from the 10 series.
Okay, the 10 series was a little bit weird.
Yeah.
Once again, probably not in terms of price. There's not many around, but when it comes to those circuits, there was other series that did the same thing.
Yeah. So
you'd be able to find that exact. If you wanted to replicate it, for example, you'd be able to find that exact circuit board in 2 or 3 other series from either Maxon or Ibanez. If you wanted to find the exact pedal, you'd probably have to stick to the US. I'd say there'd be a few of them on Craigslist or things like that, or even the Gumtree floating around here.
Yeah, sure.
Or if you wanted the sound, you'd be able to find it from a few other brands.
Yeah, cool.
Well.
Yeah,
the Guyatones, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, cool. All right, good. Last one, and this is the one I missed the most in terms of it sounded awesome. It's a Boss digital dimension, not the one with the little press buttons, the 4 press buttons. It actually had pots. Yep. I think it was a DC3.
Yep, that would be them. Did you have the digital dimension or the digital space D?
Oh, I think it was dimension.
Okay. So there's 3 DC pedals. There's obviously the digital, the Dimension C, which is the little button. Yep. The button pusher. It is one of the greatest modulation pedals that's ever graced.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's outstanding. So I got my box one of those that it gets a good workout. Then they released 2 versions of the DC3. They released a digital Space D, which was mainly Japan only, which was a very strange thing for them to do. But they called it the digital Space D, released it in Japan, and then sort of went from there with it. There was rumors of them being sold in Australia as well, but I haven't met anyone that's bought one new.
Okay.
Then the digital Dimension was the worldwide release.
Yeah.
I want to say they changed it because Space D may have been used a little bit strangely in Western culture. I mean, if you're walking around talking about your Space D,
like space,
might get taken the wrong way. Not sure.
Okay.
Either way, there are still plenty of them floating around. I wouldn't be too heartbroken about that. They're around sort of the 150 to 250 sort of mark. So
yeah, cool.
Not the gold mine you might want it to be.
No, that's okay. No, this is good news. I don't feel so bad for moving these pedals on, and I've got digital chorus happening elsewhere in my rig. I'm unashamedly a fan of digital chorus.
Yeah, by all means. I mean, I've got some of the Maxon made a digital series for their Japanese market, and they've got, you know, some of the best digital choruses and digital flanges and stuff that you can get, plus modulated delays, modulations, and that sort of stuff. And they're, you know, they do what they do really well. I mean, they're not going to do an analog sound, obviously, but they can make you sound like a pretty good robot quite easily.
Nice.
Which is what you're sort of after,
Yeah,
I guess,
awesome.
if you're going digital chorus.
Awesome. Another obscure Boss fact. I wonder if you could verify or not. Is it true there's no Boss compact pedal with the number 4 in the name?
It's not. There's one.
Uh-huh.
I just packed one up for shipping yesterday. The parametric EQ, the PQ4.
Oh, PQ4, yes.
Yeah, the PQ4 is the only Boss compact that has the number 4 in it. Because obviously, unlucky in Japan and all this.
Yeah,
but,
Japanese culture. Gotcha.
Yeah, the PQ4, and interestingly enough, the base version of that was the PQ3B.
Okay.
Most of the other bass pedals, they sort of went, you know, BF2B, CE2B. They stuck with the same one. With that, they went with a different number. So either they thought this was a really bad idea from the start, or it was just a bit of an anomaly for them.
Sneak it through. Wow. There you go. Cool. Now tell me about Mojo Stompboxes online, because you've actually turned your passion into your career, what you do.
Yes. So yeah, Mojo Stompboxes started in, I think it started legitimately in the beginning of 2015. I was, prior to that, I was running toy room effects and building and modifying and all that sort of stuff. I still had a lot of pride in what happened with that, but then I didn't have it wasn't financially stable enough to be building and modifying. And I've always, you know, enjoyed buying and selling pedals and all that. But then decided to basically get up and running with Mojo Stompboxes and basically bring a bit of joy into the idea of both collecting pedals and also just not being snobby with them, enjoying them for what they are, because that's a big part of what collecting is. Obviously, there's the collectors that, you know, treasure their stuff and make sure they let everyone know about their collection, and then there's the ones that just enjoy having a ton of stuff. They enjoy having what they think is the best, or what they get the most joy out of. And I wanted to, you know, to take that and sort of celebrate those kind of pedals. So obviously the old Boss stuff kicks off, because I know it gets a lot of slack when people are like, why don't you just buy a new Boss pedal? And a lot of it is, you know, if you want a pedal that you can play and you can't, you know, tell the difference, then buy a new Boss pedal. If you want a pedal that sounds a lot of the time fairly similar to a reproduction pedal, then get a vintage one, but have the enjoyment of owning a vintage pedal. Have the enjoyment of owning something that has some history, having a pedal that's either lived its whole life being locked away in a cupboard in Osaka for, you know, for 30 years and then seeing the light of day in mint condition, or something that's, you know, been touring since 1982 on someone's pedal board. You get that history that you don't get with a lot of modern pedals, and I guess that's what I'm passionate about. I know I ride vintage bikes and have a few vintage guitars, and there's just something about them that they have some history to them. And yeah, I wanted to sort of to bring that to the world, as well as a lot of the old Japanese stuff that doesn't get the attention that it should. So the Guyatone pedals, the Tokai stuff, the Pearl pedals. So the drum brand did manufactured some pedals in the 80s. Brands like that did either bring back some nostalgia, or people say, oh yeah, I saw one of those in the 80s, or oh yeah, they don't make them like this anymore. Just to bring some excitement back to that sort of gear.
Yeah, cool. It's a really interesting, time in history, really. That 80s period, late 70s into the 80s, of course, when those companies were going.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I get questions all the time, or I get people posting on Instagram that are, you know, they grew up in that time. And they're like, oh, this was my first multi-effects, talking about the old Boss, like the Boss's multi-effects, where they just put 4 circuits in a box. So it was a literal sense of multi-effects. And people saying, oh yeah, that was my first gigging board, or that was, you know, my equivalent of an ME50 or an ME70, one of the newer multi-effects. A lot of young guys had grown up as their first pedal. and they get excited to see that. They're like, oh yeah, that was a really cool thing because it was real pedals in a real box, and they get really keen on that. And so there's a lot of nostalgia that comes out of the 70s and 80s stuff. That's for sure.
Cool, awesome. And a lot of those multi-effects, I know one of the big deals with, say, the Roland multi-effects are the ones where the overdrive circuit is still analog.
Yeah. The two that a lot of people give them a lot of flack, and a lot of people don't really understand them because they think they're not worth a whole lot, is Boss's BE5M. So the M the programmable version doesn't stand for program because it starts with a P. But general idea is that you can set your presets on it, and it's 4 real Boss pedals in one box. It runs off a single 9-volt Boss power supply. It has a headphone output, got stereo output. It's everything you could want, and they're well under $200 Australian. They're very, very useful for pub gigs, for rehearsals, just for places where you don't want to take $600-700 worth of pedals.
Yeah,
but you still want to use real circuits. And they did that, and Maxon did the PUE series, which is the same thing. It's programmable presets, so you can set it up so it just switches between the circuits, and it's real Maxon pedals. It's real circuits in the box. So that's something you don't get nowadays. Nowadays you get a couple of boutique builders doing stuff like that. It's a bit of fun. But now it's all emulated. It's all, we want to get 600 effects in one, whereas these ones were, you don't need a fancy power supply. You don't need any other pedals. You don't need a pedal board. You can just take this and your Boss power supply, and you can even throw that on your board if you want. If you want to run your favorite wire with it, you can put your wire on the same board as your multi-effects, and you're still playing with the real circuits. Yeah,
cool. I remember those units when they came out. There was Roland had the GP8, which actually was that Boss or Roland?
Roland.
That was Roland. Okay, so that was like the rack mountable one had the 8 effects in there, which I think was still analog. I think they were analog until the GP16. But there was also a floor unit that Boss came out with, which was similar to the GP8. Was it the ME5 or the?
Yeah. The actual full-blown multi-effects that they sort of came out with. Yeah, I've got. Once again, I got some Boss catalogs as well.
Yeah, cool.
And I've got some of the original ones with those, with the original pricing and all that, and they were the cost of a small Honda. At the same time,
yes,
like you could buy a car for the same price as you could buy this.
Absolutely. And then you had the unit you were talking about. So what was the model you were talking about? I know the one that got the smaller, more of a plastic sort of enclosure.
Yeah, they're full plastic, but I've got 5 or 6. I've never broken them.
Yeah, cool.
But they're the BE series. So
yeah, that's it. Cool.
They made 3. They made a BE5B, which is the bass version.
The red one.
The full 10-band EQ and stuff, and the red one was the programmable one.
Okay, cool.
So that was the next year. They were the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, they're definitely a bargain in terms of getting those kind of sounds and the analog circuits. Nice. Yeah. I also had a Boss GT3 when they went to the metal, the kind of bigger ones with the expression pedal, and the distortions there were analog as well, and they sounded great. It just sounded like 4 or 5 different Boss dirt pedals, which sounded really, really cool. So I had a lot of fun with that box for a long time.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. So Mojo Online, so you're online, Mojo Stompboxes. You got a great website. One thing I like about your website, you've got a really cool blog page where you post fun and informative facts.
Yeah, well, I've been trying to keep diligent with that. I've been a bit slack recently because I've had a few other things going on with the real world and the website that I've been trying to sort of get up, but they're on the back end at the moment. But yeah, the blog was sort of my outlet to, I guess, run alongside Instagram and Facebook and give a bit more detail into some stuff.
Yeah, sure.
So I know I get a lot more gear coming through here than a lot of people would, so I can investigate it. I can go inside and see what they're all about. I can see the differences that a lot of people wouldn't, because they'd only have one at a time, whereas I'd have 5 or 6 from a few years apart, so I can see the differences in them. and I can log them, and I can also talk about the Boss sort of collection that I've got with the accessories and the memorabilia basically side of it, and I can give a bit of input onto some Boss gear that people have never seen before, because it wasn't all about the pedals with them. The miscellaneous accessories that they have sort of released as promo pieces and all that
Yeah, cool.
are nearly impossible to find.
So what's well, let's talk about that for a minute. What's some of the Boss accessories that you've managed to collect?
The one that most people would have seen somewhere in the world is the mouse, so the mice, the computer mice.
Oh, yeah.
I've got all 3 variations of that.
Nice.
Once again, if you've seen one, you've probably seen one. But they released 3,
Okay.
a DS1, a SD1, and a Blues driver.
Yeah.
So I
Very
actually
cool.
managed to find 2 of them in Japan, and then the 3rd one was a gift from Boss Australia to sort of complete the collection.
Nice.
So that was they're the ones that a lot of people have seen. You go a bit deeper, they released 4 watches in the shape of the Boss compact pedal. I put a photo up of them on my Instagram, and that went pretty viral. That was actually on Reddit at some stage. That got thrown around a lot of places that I was sort of stumbling on it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, in early 2000s, they released some watches, and I managed to get 3 variations of them. Then once again, Boss UK this time managed to hook me up with the 4th one.
Nice.
In exchange for a little bit of my doubles basically. So
Yeah.
anyone familiar with collecting Pokemon cards or whatever would sort of understand where I'm coming from with that. Where I had a few extras lying around that I didn't need, so
Yeah.
managed to strike a deal with Boss UK on that.
Cool.
And then that goes all the way down to I've got stress balls in the shape of Boss pedals. I've got most of the collection of compact clocks, which is basically just little tiny clocks that are about a quarter the size of a Boss pedal.
Okay.
I've got erasers, I've got USBs, I've got a glow-in-the-dark foot switch, like the little rubber thing that sits on the top of the pedals.
Oh, yeah.
I've got it's a glow-in-the-dark one that no one's been able to give me an answer for, but it's definitely from the Boss factory. I've got little plaques, I've got the OD3 backpack, I've got a Boss toiletries bag, which once again no one's ever seen, and I don't know if it was made for toiletries, but it's exactly like the toiletries bag you'd take caravanning with you.
Okay. That's cool, man.
A whole lot of little things like that. I've got a cloth that's in the shape of a tremolo pan. Yeah, just little things like that I've stumbled across basically over the years, either domestically or overseas. A lot of the stuff comes from Japan, because the Japanese are those strange sort of people that don't use things, and if they don't use it, they keep it for a long time.
Okay.
Without opening it or anything like that. So I mean, a lot of the stuff that I've got, still has the original packaging and is in amazing condition and all that, because they're that sort of society where they really look after their things.
Cool. Nice. Now, you spoke a bit about toy room effects, but you're still doing repairs and mods as well as your online.
Yes.
buying and selling?
I'm opening up Mojo nowadays to mods and repairs. I've always specialised in repairing vintage pedals, because I have a bit of a library. It's in storage now, but I've had a bit of a library of old parts stocks. So Sprague capacitors, a lot of old transistors and things like that I can sort of respectfully restore some vintage pedals with.
Yeah, cool.
Without just using cheap repro parts. I mean, I've always sort of taken a bit of pride in that. But nowadays I'm working on simple mods to newer Boss pedals. I'm sort of taking a different approach to the big modders by basically trying to respect what the original circuit was. So not try and change everything, not say, oh, this pedal doesn't sound good, I'm going to do this to make it sound good, because I think that's a bit objective if you know stuff like that. If you're saying, it sounds good, because good is only what your ears hear.
Of course, yeah.
I think I try to keep them as close to stock as I can, and then usually add just a little bit more. So add a switch to add a little bit more bass if you want to use it, more than anything. And so I'm not grabbing new pedals and modding them. I'm sort of trying to find them on Gumtree and just trying to bring them back to life, I guess, a little bit. And then obviously, the repairs. There's a bit of fun in being able to bring back an old CE2 from the brink and giving it a new life, giving it a few more years.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. Nice. And so you're online. You've got a great website, but you're also just starting a new chapter at Stage Door.
Yes,
which is awesome.
As of today, the time of recording this, which is not when you're going to be listening to it, but as of the moment, I am basically going to branch out and put together a little pop-up store at Stage Door Studios, Stage Door Production, which is in Alexandria here in Sydney. So in that sort of inner city hub. They're absolutely huge there as well. They're probably the best studio, which is why I went to them first. And they love the idea. And so basically I'm going to be moving in there to have a bit of a physical presence and have a bit of foot traffic going through the front reception area over there. So I'm going to move some of my cabinets over there, bring a few guitars in. So I'm going to look at getting a few Guyatones and Japanese Fender and maybe some Greco or all that sort of stuff into the store, as well as cables and straps and the sort of stuff you need when you're rehearsing. And but being able to sort of open the showroom up a little bit to the public, because obviously my outlets at the moment are online. The amount of love that I get from Instagram, the amount of messages that I get saying, yeah, this stuff's killer, like, how did you get this, where did you get this, I think people will really appreciate in a physical setting to walk past a bit of a museum that's also for sale.
Yeah, awesome.
Sean over at Stage Door loved the idea when I approached him about it, and we're gonna try and make that a real destination for musicians and all that for stage one over the next few months.
Excellent, that's great. Yeah, just I probably should backtrack a little, but I think you've explained it as you've gone. But Stage Door, is one of the best rehearsal venues in Sydney. So a lot of big bands, touring bands, will do stuff there, and lots of people just like me who've rehearsed there many times for different bands too. Get there too.
We're trying to work out some trading hours and trying to work out, when the best time to be there is. And we went through he took me through his very secretive bookings sheet. And there's a lot there to be excited about. There's a lot of people there that I'm gonna fanboy over, I guess, when they walk through.
Yeah,
so
nice.
It could be a very exciting time to meet some people and do a bit of people watching there.
Yeah. Cool, man. Nice. Yeah, I guess that's not the 9 p.m. till 12 p.m. slot that I'll find myself in if I'm ever there.
Yeah, look, I mean, you get 12 bands at some nights there at 9 o'clock. So I'll definitely be showing my face around those sort of times when it's busy, because you've got 6 bands leaving and 6 bands coming. So
yeah,
a lot of people there to chat to, and a lot of questions to answer around those sort of times. But it's exciting, and so that's stage one of the Mojo Stompboxes, and Stage Door, the venture, and then stage 2 will be Mojo Canteen, which still is under wraps, and that's all I can really talk about. But
that's fair enough.
Yeah,
cool.
That'll be stage 2 of it.
Great, man.
A couple of months after.
Yeah, awesome. So it's an iconic place, and it sounds like some great stuff's going on there as well. So fantastic. So Tim, what's the best way, if you're not living in Sydney? Many of our listeners are from around the world, or certainly outside of Sydney as well. What's the best way for people to keep up with all the stuff you're doing at Mojo Stompboxes?
Well, look, the easiest way is Qantas will operate flights to and from Sydney from most destinations.
That's true.
So if you've got the income and you've got the time, then jump on a plane. Alexandria is right near the airport.
It is. It's very close.
Just wander on over. But no, I'm more active on Instagram than anywhere else.
Okay. Yep.
There's something about posting a a square photo of some cool gear
Yeah.
and a small caption is enough. So yeah, I'm on Instagram at Mojo Stompboxes. MojoStompboxes.com is the website, which has links to everything we do. It
Great.
has a link to the blog. It's got a link to the contact page, to the repairs, to the mods, everything like that. It's all there, and also Facebook and all that, or in person soon.
Great. That's really cool. Well, Tim, thank you so much for your time. It's been really fun talking about pedals. I'm totally in your, I think I'm in your age demographic of growing up with these pedals and loving them. So it's so good to hear, that you're loving them too, and then spreading the love and celebrating, a really cool period in gear history and keeping it alive. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's all about. It's about celebrating it. It's about enjoying it. It's it's about loving what you have and what you do. So, if people can take some pride in their old gear or in their special gear, then that's the goal.
All right, there's my conversation with Tim Green from MojoStompboxes.com. Make sure you check out Tim's stuff online and also at Stage Door in Alexandria in Sydney if you're in the area. All right, if you want more Guitar Speak podcasts, why not subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher, and you'll get our weekly episodes delivered lovingly to your device each and every single time we present one. We've had some amazing guitar players, luthiers, gear builders on the show. There's another 33 episodes in our archive, so it's always free to dig back and dig those out as well. People like Jude Gold, Alistair Green, Gretchen Menn, Andy Timmons, etc., etc. So many great people. And a lot more great stuff to come. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, and I know every podcast asks you to do this, and I'm going to join in. Hey, if you'd like to follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, get involved with the posts, that really helps. If you'd like to share our episodes through your social networks, that's a great help as well. So I do appreciate you doing that. All right, well, thanks again for joining me. My name's Matt Wakeling, and you've been listening to the Guitar Speak podcast. We'll see you next time. Bye now.